The moment my twin brother Aaron stepped into my rural cabin at dusk, his shattered eyes told me everything his quiet voice tried to hide. His perfect marriage was nothing but a gilded cage of endless emotional abuse. We were identical down to the last freckle beside our left brows, same tall lean frame, same faint gravel in our voices, so similar that even our closest relatives struggled to tell us apart. For 28 years, we shared every genetic detail, but never the same life. While I spent years roaming mountain trails, living rough and free, working seasonal outdoor jobs and sleeping under open skies, Aaron had locked himself inside a pristine suburban villa, trapped in a marriage everyone in our upscale community envied. Everyone praised his luck. Everyone adored his wife, Chloe. Chloe Carter, the golden wife of Willow Creek subdivision. She ran community charity drives, hosted weekend wine tastings for the neighborhood wives, posted curated family photos on social media every Sunday, and smiled so warmly that no one would ever guess what happened behind the locked doors of their spotless home. No one knew she'd spent 3 years slowly breaking my brother piece by piece. "She doesn't hit me," Aaron said that night, his shoulders hunched, hands trembling as he handed me his wedding band, his wedding watch, his entire carefully polished life. "She doesn't yell loudly. She just wears me down. Every mistake, every quiet flaw, every small thing I fail to do perfectly. She makes me feel worthless, every single day." His voice was hollow, drained of every spark it once held. This was not the brother I grew up with, the boy who used to race bikes with me, who laughed loud and dreamed big. This was a faded, apologetic version of him, a man trained to shrink himself small to fit his wife's perfect mold. He was tired of being the quiet, incompetent husband in everybody's eyes. Tired of being silently condemned for never being good enough for Chloe's flawless standards. Most of all, he was tired of waking up every morning dreading the soft, cutting disappointment in her eyes. So we made a deal. A clean, simple swap. He would take my truck, my cabin, my isolated, unglamorous freedom. He would disappear from Willow Creek for good, heal the cracks in his soul, and finally breathe without judgment. And I would step into his skin. I would live in his villa, wear his clothes, answer to his name, and sleep beside the woman who'd spent 3 years torturing my twin into submission. I didn't hesitate for a second. I spent years watching my brother visit family gatherings exhausted, hollow, and withdrawn. I listened to his late-night calls, his quiet excuses for her cold behavior, his endless repetition of "it's fine, I can handle it." I watched him shrink to keep her perfect marriage intact. Chloe had spent years preying on his gentle, forgiving nature. Now she was about to get me instead. By 9 o'clock that night, I was driving Aaron's sleek silver sedan through the manicured streets of Willow Creek. The neighborhood was picture-perfect, uniform white picket fences, blooming rose bushes, spotless lawns, and large modern villas glowing with warm interior light. It was the kind of community that looked like a postcard, the kind of place where pain and cruelty were never supposed to exist. Their house was the quiet showcase of the entire block. Floor-to-ceiling windows, minimalist neutral decor, curated floral arrangements on every counter, not a single item out of place. Chloe's signature aesthetic, calm, elegant, impossibly controlled. I stepped through the front door wearing Aaron's favorite flannel shirt, his scuffed casual shoes, his wedding band sliding cold and heavy on my finger. The second I crossed the threshold, her voice wrapped around me like silk and ice. "You're late." Chloe stood at the kitchen island, her blonde hair styled perfectly, her casual linen dress pressed and immaculate. She was stirring a glass of iced lemon water, her movements graceful and deliberate, the picture of a devoted, patient spouse. She didn't look up at first, too busy maintaining the gentle, disappointed tone she'd mastered over years. "You said you'd be home by 7. I kept dinner warm." Again. Her tone was soft, sweet, reasonable, the tone that fooled every neighbor, every friend, every community acquaintance. The tone that made everyone think Aaron was the lucky, ungrateful husband who could never appreciate his incredible wife. When she finally lifted her eyes to meet mine, her perfect smile faltered for half a second. Just half a second. It was barely noticeable. A tiny flicker of confusion in her blue eyes, a slight tension in her jaw. She was used to Aaron's hunched posture, his guilty downward gaze, his immediate rush to apologize for every tiny imperfection. But I wasn't shrinking. I stood tall, shoulders relaxed, eyes steady, no trace of guilt or submission. I simply looked at her, calm and unyielding, and waited. Chloe recovered instantly, her polished smile sliding back into place like a mask. She set down her glass and walked toward me, reaching up to brush a strand of hair from my forehead, a tender, affectionate gesture she performed for every onlooker, but rarely gave sincerely behind closed doors. "Long day, honey," she murmured softly. Any normal night, Aaron would have flinched. He would have rushed to explain himself, apologize for being late, promised to do better tomorrow, scrambled to make up for his unforgivable mistake of inconveniencing her perfect schedule. But I didn't move. I didn't apologize. I didn't speak. I just stared at her. The confusion in her eyes deepened. She could feel the difference, even if she couldn't name it. The energy in the room had shifted entirely. The quiet, defeated man she controlled so effortlessly was gone, and in his place stood someone unshakable. Still, she refused to question her own control. She was too accustomed to being the perfect wife in public, the unchallenged ruler of this house in private. She turned back to the kitchen, her tone dropping from warm public affection to cold, sharp reprimand the second her back was to me. "You tracked dirt on the entry floor. I mopped this morning. You never pay attention to anything I do for this home." There it was. The real Chloe. No warmth, no patience, no kindness. Just quiet, unrelenting criticism. A small, petty jab designed to chip away at confidence, to reinforce her unspoken rule: everything in this house must be perfect, and every imperfection was his fault. This was the abuse no one saw. Not screams, not bruises, not visible violence. Just endless, tedious, soul-crushing judgment. A lifetime of small failures, constant disappointment, never being enough. This was what broke Aaron. I glanced down at a faint smudge of dirt on the pristine white tile, barely visible to the naked eye. It was nothing. A single mark most people would overlook entirely. I looked back at her. "It's dirt," I said flatly. "I'll wipe it up." My voice was calm, unapologetic, neutral. Chloe froze. She whipped around, her eyes wide with shock. Aaron never spoke to her like this. He never responded without flinching, without apologizing, without rushing to soothe her irritation. He always bowed his head, accepted the blame, and begged for her forgiveness. She stared at me, searching my face for the familiar guilt, the habitual submission, but found none. "Are you upset with me?" she asked, her voice sharpening slightly, the first crack in her perfect composure showing. I shook my head slowly. "Not upset. Just tired of hearing about a spot on the floor." The room went quiet. The soft hum of the refrigerator, the distant rustle of leaves outside the window, the perfect stillness of her curated home, all of it felt thicker, heavier. The peaceful suburban atmosphere curdled into quiet tension. Chloe's expression tightened. She was confused, unsettled, and faintly annoyed. She didn't like change. She didn't like her obedient husband growing a backbone. She liked control. And for the first time in 3 years, her control was slipping. "You've been distant lately," she said, reverting back to her soft, wounded tone, the tone she used to make him feel guilty for any shift in her perfect dynamic. "I work so hard to keep this home beautiful, to support you, to make our marriage wonderful. I don't understand why you're so ungrateful." I watched her perform her victim act with cold clarity. This was her game. Build a perfect life for the public, drain her husband's spirit in private, and position herself as the long-suffering, devoted partner to everyone who watched. Tonight, the game changed. I walked past her, heading toward the living room, ignoring her passive-aggressive plea for remorse. "I'm showering," I said simply. Chloe stared after me, her elegant features hardening with quiet irritation. She was already drafting her next lecture, already planning how to reset my attitude, how to put her husband back in his rightful, submissive place. She had no idea. She thought she'd spent 3 years winning. Thought she'd broken my twin completely, molded him into the quiet, compliant husband she could control forever. She thought she was in charge of this perfect marriage, this perfect home, this perfect life. But the man she'd broken was gone. And I was just getting started. Tonight was only the beginning. I would live in her perfect world, follow her perfect rules, observe every layer of her fake persona, and slowly, carefully, thoroughly, I would expose every single rotten piece hidden beneath her flawless mask. The winner she thought she was. She had no idea how thoroughly she was about to lose everything. The next morning, I woke up in Aaron's oversized designer bed, surrounded by the sterile, curated perfection Chloe had built for our marriage. Sunlight filtered through white linen curtains in soft, controlled streaks. The room smelled of lavender fabric softener and polished wood, a scent so artificial it bordered on performative. Nothing in this house existed naturally. Every detail was staged, cleaned, and calibrated for outside eyes. I swung my legs over the mattress and stood up. Aaron's body was familiar, same height, same build, same faint scar along the right forearm from our childhood bike crash, but the way I occupied it was entirely new. For 3 years, this frame had hunched, shrunk, and apologized for existing. Now I held it straight. The bedroom door creaked open. Chloe stepped inside, already fully dressed and flawless in a cream-colored knit sweater and tailored slacks. Her blonde hair fell in soft, intentional waves, her makeup subtle and airbrushed. She looked every inch the serene, put-together suburban wife. In her hand, she held a mug of black coffee, exactly how Aaron never drank it. Aaron hated bitter black coffee. He always took cream and 2 sugars, a small, harmless preference Chloe had mocked relentlessly. She'd called it childish, weak, undisciplined, another tiny flaw to add to his endless list of failures. She set the mug on the nightstand beside me, her smile gentle and practiced. "I made your favorite," she lied sweetly. Any other morning, Aaron would have panicked. He would have rushed to drink it anyway, stomach churning, too afraid to correct her, too desperate to avoid her quiet disappointment. He would have apologized for his own taste, for inconveniencing her routine, for being difficult. I picked up the mug, took one small sip of the scorching bitter liquid, and set it back down without a flinch, without a wince, without a single trace of guilt. "Not bad," I said simply. Chloe's smile faltered, just for a second. She'd been ready for resistance, for hesitation, for the familiar quiet surrender. She'd been ready to chip away at another small part of him, to remind him that his preferences didn't matter in her perfect home. Instead, I met her eyes calmly. No fear. No deference. No apology. "Did you sleep well?" she asked, shifting quickly back to her soft wife persona, attempting to regain her lost control. "Fine," I replied. Just fine? She tilted her head, injecting a faint note of wounded tenderness. I worked so hard to make the bedroom comfortable for you. I adjusted the thermostat last night, changed the sheets, made sure everything was perfect. I wish you'd appreciate the little things I do. There it was again, her signature manipulation. Turn ordinary household care into a monumental sacrifice, frame basic wifely duties as selfless devotion, then weaponize gratitude to make him feel unworthy. I stared at her, unblinking. I appreciate it, I said flatly. The room is comfortable. My lack of emotional reaction threw her off balance. She was used to fishing for remorse, for flustered thanks, for eager promises to do better. She was not used to neutrality. After a beat, she blinked, recovered, and gestured toward the hallway. Breakfast is ready. Maya stopped by earlier, she wants us at the neighborhood barbecue prep tomorrow. Everyone's pitching in. I already volunteered you to handle the grill. Another small, quiet power move. Aaron hated grilling. He hated the heat, the mess, the attention. He'd told her that dozens of times. But Chloe loved forcing him into public, performative roles. She loved parading her obedient husband in front of the neighbors, loved letting everyone see how docile and compliant he was for her. It was another way she kept him small, publicly, socially, visibly. In the past, Aaron would have nodded quietly, accepted the task, and spent the entire weekend dreading it. I nodded once. Sure. I'll handle the grill. Chloe's brows lifted, faintly surprised by my instant agreement. She'd expected hesitation, quiet reluctance, another chance to lecture me on being more involved and grateful. Good, she said, her tone sharpening almost imperceptibly. Try not to mess it up last minute like you usually do. The whole street will be there. I don't want people talking. The underlying threat was clear. Don't embarrass me. Don't ruin my perfect reputation. Don't make me look bad. I gave her a slow, easy smile, the kind Aaron never had the confidence to wear. I won't mess it up. Her lips pressed into a thin, doubtful line. She couldn't place the shift in me, couldn't name why the air felt lighter on my shoulders, why I no longer shrank under her criticism. She turned and walked back downstairs, her steps sharp with unspoken frustration. I stood in the quiet bedroom for a long moment, staring at the closed door. I was starting to see the full picture now. Chloe's abuse was never loud or illegal. It was microscopic, daily, relentless. She rewrote Aaron's preferences, erased his boundaries, punished his personality, and trained him to exist only as an extension of her perfect life. Every small choice she stripped from him was another brick in his cage. I pulled out Aaron's phone from the nightstand drawer. He kept everything locked quietly, hidden in plain sight, notes in a private folder, timestamped voice memos, blurred screenshots of her late-night criticisms, her endless nitpicking, her cruel offhand comments she always pretended never to say. He never saved them to fight back. He saved them because he thought he was crazy, thought he needed proof to confirm his own suffering was real. I scrolled through the files slowly, documenting every entry, memorizing every pattern. Day after day of "you're so lazy. Why can't you be more ambitious? You never help me enough. You're always disappointing me." Years of emotional erosion, buried beneath a perfect social media feed and a neighborhood full of admirers. I closed the phone and headed downstairs. The kitchen was immaculate, countertops wiped clean, dishes stacked perfectly, every item aligned with obsessive precision. Chloe stood at the island repotting white roses, her movements graceful and refined, already preparing for the public image she would wear all weekend. A few minutes later, the front door knocked lightly. "Maya Wilson, Our next-door neighbor and the neighborhood's biggest social commentator, let herself in with the casual familiarity of someone who considered this house her second home. She was bright, chatty, endlessly optimistic, and completely fooled by Chloe's mask. "Good morning, you two," Maya grinned, glancing between us. "I just popped over to confirm tomorrow's barbecue. Chloe, your flower displays for the picnic tables are going to be stunning. Everyone already knows you're the most talented wife on the block." Chloe smiled demurely, flicking a rose petal gently. "It's nothing, really. I just love making our community beautiful for everyone." She turned her gaze to me, softening her tone deliberately for Maya's benefit. "And Ethan's going to man the grill tomorrow. He's been working so hard lately. I'm glad he's finally taking time to join our neighborhood events." The lie was seamless. She framed my compliance as generosity, framed her forced control as spousal encouragement, framed her lifelong suppression of Aaron as patient nurturing. Maya cooed instantly. "You two are honestly the perfect couple. I always say it, your marriage is goals. So supportive, so balanced, so peaceful. I wish everyone had what you have." I sipped my water quietly, watching Chloe's mask glow under the neighbor's praise. She fed on this. This was her real drug, not money, not status, but the unending validation of being seen as kind, patient, and blessed, while her husband slowly suffocated in silence. Before I could respond, Maya tilted her head slightly, studying me. "You seem different today, Aaron. More awake. Less worn down." Chloe's smile tightened for half a second. She jumped in before I could speak, her tone warm and dismissive. "Oh, he's just in a better mood. He's been so stressed with work lately, I've been helping him relax." Another lie. She hadn't helped him relax. She'd been the source of every single one of his stresses. Maya bought it instantly, nodding happily. "Well, I'm glad you're doing better. Can't wait for tomorrow's party." The whole neighborhood's excited. After Maya left, the front door clicked shut, and the warm neighborly atmosphere evaporated in an instant. Chloe's shoulders dropped. Her soft smile vanished. She turned to me, her eyes cold and calculating. "Don't get used to slacking off," she said sharply. "Just because you're in a better mood doesn't mean you get to stop contributing. This household runs on my effort, and you need to keep up." I leaned against the counter, crossing my arms, and looked at her straight on. "I'm keeping up," I said. "I've kept up for 3 years." Chloe froze. Her eyes widened, caught off guard by the quiet edge in my voice, the unspoken weight behind my words. No one had ever spoken to her like this in this house. Not Aaron. Not friends. Not family. Everyone always bowed to her grace, her patience, her perfect persona. She stared at me, unsettled, a flicker of true irritation finally breaking through her polished mask. "I don't know why you're acting so strange lately," she said stiffly. "But I suggest you snap out of it. I don't have time for moodiness." I pushed off the counter and walked toward the hallway, leaving her standing alone in her perfect, empty kitchen. "I'm not moody," I said over my shoulder. "I'm just done apologizing." Chloe stared after me, speechless. She thought she'd spent years breaking my twin into a compliant, quiet shell. She thought she knew every version of him, every weakness, every flaw. But tomorrow, at the neighborhood barbecue, in front of every person who worshipped her perfect image, I was going to start peeling back every layer of her lie. She'd spent 3 years winning. Now the tables were finally turning. Saturday afternoon bathed Willow Creek in golden, lazy sunlight. The entire neighborhood spilled out onto the central community lawn, grills smoking, music drifting across the green, kids chasing each other between picnic tables, and groups of adults laughing over cold drinks and charred barbecue. This was Chloe's stage. Every block party, every charity event, every casual neighborhood gathering was her personal red carpet. She moved through the crowd like a woman born to be adored, greeting newcomers, complimenting every housewife's decor, laughing softly at every joke, and dropping humble little lines about how blessed she was with her home, her community, and her loving husband. I stood beside her in Erin's plain flannel shirt, manning the large charcoal grill exactly as she'd ordered me to. In the old days, this would have been Erin's personal hell. He would have stood here quiet and stiff, hyper-aware of every eye on him, terrified of making a single mistake, burning the burgers, or drawing Chloe's silent disappointment. He would have stayed small, invisible, obedient, letting her shine bright while he existed only as her background prop. But I wasn't shrinking. I flipped the burgers steady, controlled the flames with practiced ease, and breathed in the open air without a single ounce of anxiety. Chloe glanced at me from the corner of her eye as she chatted with a circle of surrounding neighbors. She looked unsettled. All morning, she had waited for me to slip up, wait for the familiar hesitation, the quiet nervousness, the need for her guidance. When I'd cleaned the yard perfectly without her reminders, prepped the grill without her corrections, and carried every cooler without her micromanaging, her unease had only grown. Still, she refused to question her own control. Instead, she turned her discomfort into performance. She turned to the group of wives standing beside the picnic table, her voice warm, sweet, and deliberately loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. "You guys have no idea how hard Erin has been trying lately," she sighed fondly, shaking her head like a patient, long-suffering saint. "He's always been so insecure, so hesitant to step up. I spent so much time building his confidence, pushing him to be more present, more responsible. It's exhausting being the strong one in the marriage, but someone has to do it." A soft chorus of agreement rose from the crowd. Maya nodded immediately, her tone sympathetic. "You really are such an amazing wife, Chloe. Most people would have given up trying with a partner who's so reserved and unmotivated. You're so patient with him." Another woman chimed in. "Erin's lucky to have you. You carry this whole household single-handedly." Chloe's smile bloomed brighter, her eyes glistening with manufactured gratitude. "I just love him enough to keep trying. He's fragile, you know. He needs gentle guidance. If I weren't here pushing him forward, he'd just fade into the background, never chase anything better for himself." Every word was a knife wrapped in silk. She painted my brother as weak, incompetent, emotionally fragile, and herself as his devoted savior. She took 3 years of breaking his spirit, twisting his confidence, draining his self-worth, and repackaged it as endless, charitable patience. This was how she did it. This was how she hid her abuse in plain sight, by rewriting the narrative so thoroughly that the entire neighborhood celebrated her for the damage she inflicted. I flicked the last burger shut, lowered the grill lid, and turned to face her and the crowd. The chatter softened. Everyone's eyes drifted to me, waiting for the usual response, a shy, awkward smile, a mumbled thanks for her kindness, a quiet acceptance of my place as her fragile, fortunate husband. But I didn't smile. I didn't mumble. I looked straight at Chloe, my voice calm, clear, and perfectly audible to every neighbor circle around us. "Fragile isn't the right word." The crowd stilled. Chloe's smile froze on her face, her eyes darting to me in sharp, startled warning. I kept going, slow and unrushed. "Compliant is better." He was compliant, because he spent 3 years learning that every preference, every mood, every small mistake of his would be picked apart until he apologized for existing. A quiet hush fell over the group. Maya's cheerful expression faltered completely. Chloe's tone turned sharp and panicked, her mask slipping for the first time in public. "Aaron, that's ridiculous, you're being dramatic in front of everyone." "Am I?" I tilted my head slightly, my gaze never leaving hers. "You just told this entire neighborhood that I'm insecure, unmotivated, and incapable of growing without your constant guidance. You make a living telling people how weak I am so they'll praise you for saving me." Several neighbors exchanged uncomfortable glances. No one had ever heard Aaron push back. No one had ever heard him contradict his perfect wife. Chloe's fingers tightened around her plastic cup, her knuckles whitening. She scrambled to recover her tone, sliding back into soft, wounded vulnerability. "I'm only speaking from love," she insisted, voice trembling artificially. "I talk about these things because I want you to improve. I support you. I build you up. You wear me down," I cut in evenly. "No anger. No shouting. Just quiet, unshakable truth. You correct my coffee order to make me wrong. You nitpick floor dirt to make me careless. You volunteer me for chores I hate so you can perform generosity in front of neighbors. You don't build me up. You shrink me down so your perfect image looks taller by comparison." The circle of friends went completely silent. Every sweet, patient story Chloe had ever told them suddenly hung in the air differently. All those little anecdotes about her struggling to motivate him, all those gentle jokes about his quiet personality, all those pitying sighs, they no longer sounded like devotion. They sounded like calculated erosion. Chloe's cheeks flushed bright red, embarrassment flaring hot beneath her flawless makeup. She'd never been publicly challenged, never had her carefully crafted narrative stripped apart in front of her entire community. Her eyes turned glassy, shifting rapidly from shock to rage to desperate victim mode. "That's not fair," she whispered, voice thick. "I sacrifice so much for this family. I organize every event, maintain this home, support your career, everyone knows how much I give. You're lashing out for no reason right now." I nodded slowly. "You give performances, not support." I gestured to the spotless lawn, the coordinated flower arrangements, the perfectly themed picnic tables. "You give the neighborhood Chloe Carter, perfect wife of Willow Creek. You give everyone smiles and charity and pretty photos. But at home, you give criticism. You give silence as punishment. You give endless disappointment until a man stops trying to have preferences at all." Maya's mouth fell slightly open, her previous admiration melting into visible confusion. The other neighbors began to shift awkwardly, their eyes lingering on Chloe's suddenly rigid, defensive posture. For the first time, they were seeing it. The imbalance. The control. The one-sided sacrifice she'd spent years fabricating. Chloe's composure cracked fully. She stepped forward, reaching for my arm in a sharp, possessive grip, her voice dropping to a furious, shaky hiss only I could hear. "Stop talking right now. You're humiliating me." I pulled my arm free from her hold, simple and unforced. "I'm not humiliating you," I said quietly. "You spent years humiliating him in private. I'm just letting everyone see the truth in public." The words landed heavy. The air around us thickened with unspoken realization. Chloe stared at me, her blue eyes blazing with raw, unmasked fury, the exact expression she never let anyone witness. No more softness, no more patience, no more gentle wifely warmth. This was her true face, petty, controlling, viciously protective of her reputation, and furious that someone had finally dared expose it. She forced a shaky smile for the crowd, but it didn't reach her eyes. "I think Aaron's just stressed," she blurted out, desperate to salvage her crumbling image. "He's been overworking lately. He doesn't mean any of this." I shook my head. "He means every word." I closed the grill lid with a firm, final click. The barbecue noise, the laughter, the music all felt distant now. The entire block's attention had quietly swiveled to our tense little circle. Chloe's perfect afternoon was broken. Her perfect marriage illusion was fractured. For years, she'd won every argument, controlled every narrative, manipulated every room. She'd broken my twin until he believed he deserved every quiet cruelty she dished out. But she couldn't break me. She'd spent so long celebrating her victory over Aaron's spirit that she never once considered what would happen if a man who wouldn't shrink, wouldn't apologize, and wouldn't bow down stepped into her perfect life. I looked at her crumbling mast, at her flushed face, at her panicked eyes begging me to stop. The game was officially changing. She thought she owned this marriage, owned this reputation, owned every piece of our story. But today, in front of everyone who worshipped her, I started taking it all back. The barbecue ended in awkward, unspoken silence. The cheerful neighborhood buzz never fully recovered after our confrontation. Chloe's perfect day had been irreparably cracked, and every neighbor went home with a quiet, lingering question in the back of their minds. Maybe the Carter marriage wasn't so flawless after all. By the time we pulled into our driveway, the golden afternoon light had faded into gray evening shadow. The second the front door clicked shut behind us, the last trace of Chloe's public sweetness evaporated. She spun on me the moment the lock engaged, her face stripped of every polite mask, every gentle smile, every performative ounce of patience she'd displayed for the crowd. Her eyes were sharp, blazing with raw, unfiltered rage. "What was that?" she snapped, her voice cold and biting, no longer soft, no longer wounded, no longer perfect. "You embarrass me in front of the entire neighborhood. You undermine me. You ruin everything I spent months planning." I kicked off my shoes slowly, unbothered by her outburst, and tossed my keys on the entryway table. For 3 years, Aaron had cowered at this exact tone. He'd flinch, apologize, beg for forgiveness, scramble to fix whatever minor mistake she'd manufactured to fuel her anger. But I didn't move an inch. I told the truth, I said flatly. Chloe laughed bitterly, a harsh, hollow sound that never graced her public persona. "The truth? You think that was the truth? You're being irrational, insecure, and ungrateful. I dedicate my life to this family, I fix every one of your flaws, I carry this marriage single-handedly, and this is how you repay me." This was her oldest, most reliable manipulation. Rewrite cruelty as sacrifice. Turn her own abuse into selfless devotion. Frame her victim as the unhinged, ungrateful villain. She stepped closer, invading my space, her tone lowering into a calculated, manipulative whisper, the same tone she'd used to break Aaron down every night for years. "You've been so strange lately. Distant, hostile, completely different. I think you're having a breakdown. You're stressed, you're paranoid, you're taking all your frustration out on me. I've been too gentle with you. I've let you get away with far too much." Gaslighting. Classic, textbook, relentless gaslighting. She was already planting seeds for the next chapter of her narrative. If I kept pushing back, if I kept exposing her, she would simply rebrand me as unstable, emotionally broken, mentally unfit. That way, every truth I spoke would be dismissed as a breakdown. Every crack in her mask would be blamed on my chaos. I stared at her calmly, letting her finish her speech, letting her burn through her anger and her lies. When she finally fell silent, chest heaving with suppressed fury, I pulled out Aaron's phone from my pocket. I unlocked it slowly, opened the private encrypted folder, and placed the device on the marble counter between us. Chloe's eyes narrowed, suspicious and defensive. "What is that?" "Proof," I said simply. I tapped play on the first audio file. Her own voice flooded the quiet kitchen, cold, impatient, unforgiving, completely unrecognizable from her public tone. "You're so useless today. Can't even fold laundry right without messing it up. I have to do everything myself." Another file clicked on. "Stop trying to have opinions. You never have anything smart to say, so just stay quiet." And another. "I wish you were half as competent as you pretend to be. I'm embarrassed to be your wife sometimes." One after another, her private cruelty spilled out into the open air, hundreds of timestamped voice memos Erin had recorded late at night, after she thought he'd fallen asleep, after she'd spent hours picking apart his confidence, his habits, his entire sense of self. Chloe's face drained of all color. Her perfect, composed features shattered into pure, unmasked panic. Her eyes darted across the screen, her breath catching in her throat, her body going rigid with terror. "He recorded me," she whispered, horrified. "I saved everything," I corrected. "He saved everything. He saved every night you broke him down, every day you made him feel worthless, every time you told him he was lucky I even stayed with him." I scrolled through the endless list of audio logs, dated back 3 full years. "You told everyone at the barbecue you spent your life building him up. That you're patient, that you're nurturing, that you sacrifice everything for this marriage." I paused, locking my gaze onto hers, driving every word straight into her crumbling facade. "That's the lie you sell to the neighborhood. These are the truths you thought no one would ever hear." Chloe's hands started shaking. She'd never expected this. She'd spent 3 years operating under one unshakable rule: Erin was weak, Erin was compliant, Erin would never fight back, never expose her, never dare preserve evidence against his perfect wife. She'd abused his kindness as weakness, his silence as agreement, his suffering as gratitude. Now every single one of her private atrocities was documented, time-stamped, unarguable. Her first instinct was to deflect, to twist, to rework the narrative one more time. "That's taken out of context," she burst out, voice cracking. "Those were late-night arguments, we were both stressed. You're editing the truth to make me look terrible. I was only trying to motivate you to be better." "Motivate me?" I repeated quietly. I played one final clip, the worst one, the one Erin had labeled in shaky handwriting in the file notes, "The night I almost left." Chloe's cold, cutting voice echoed through the speakers, sharp and unforgiving. "If you ever stop letting me guide this family, if you ever grow a backbone and think you can run this life without me, you lose everything. You have no talent, no drive, no future without me. You're nothing but a quiet, boring man who got lucky with a wife like me." The room went dead silent. Chloe's mouth fell open, no excuses left, no deflection possible. Her own words condemned her. I leaned forward, my tone steady, unyielding, every syllable a perfect boomerang of her own logic. "You always say marriage is about honesty, about sacrifice, about mutual respect. You preach that to every wife in the neighborhood every chance you get. Where was your honesty when you spent 3 years whispering that I was nothing without you? Where was your sacrifice when you spent every night draining my brother's confidence so you could feel superior by comparison? Where was your mutual respect when you recorded every flaw of his to criticize, but hid every cruelty of yours from the world?" This was the logic she could not escape. I used every value she'd publicly championed, every rule she'd forced Erin to uphold, every standard she'd held over his head, and slammed it straight back onto her own hypocrisy. Chloe staggered backward slightly, her confident posture collapsing completely. Her eyes were glassy now, panic creeping into every feature. She realized in this moment that she was no longer dealing with the man she'd broken for years. This version of her husband did not fear her anger, did not crave her approval, did not shrink to preserve her perfect image. Downstairs, the front door creaked faintly. I glanced toward the entryway to see Maya peering inside, her phone still in her hand, obviously having walked back over with leftover barbecue desserts. She'd heard the last clip. She'd heard Chloe's unfiltered cruelty echo through the quiet house. Maya's eyes were wide, shocked completely out of her usual cheerful naivety. The woman who'd spent years worshipping Chloe's perfect marriage had just heard the rotten core hidden inside it. Chloe saw her too, and pure, desperate terror flashed across her face. "Maya, this isn't what it sounds like," she stammered, rushing forward to salvage the situation, her voice shaky and desperate. "This is a private fight, he's manipulating recordings to make me look bad." Maya stepped back slowly, her expression unreadable. "I heard the words, Chloe," she said quietly. "No editing. No context. Just, you." She set the dessert container on the porch step and shook her head. "I always thought you were the kindest, most patient wife on the block. I never knew you spoke to him like that." Without another word, she turned and walked back across the lawn, leaving the front door half open, leaving Chloe's reputation bleeding out onto the evening air. Chloe stood frozen in the middle of her perfect kitchen, her mask completely shattered, her social support crumbling away in real time. She spun back to me, eyes blazing with helpless rage. "You ruined me," she hissed. "You're destroying my life just because you're bitter and ungrateful." I shook my head slowly. "I'm not destroying your life. You spent 3 years destroying his. I'm just finally letting the truth catch up." I gathered the phone, locked the evidence folder securely, and slipped it back into my pocket. The trap was fully set now. She had no idea how deep this rabbit hole went. No idea I wasn't just fighting back. No idea I wasn't even Aaron. She thought this was a marital fight. A bitter, messy breakup of her perfect suburban fairy tale. But it was so much bigger. This was the final stretch before the full explosion. All evidence collected, all social trust fractured, all her lies exposed one by one. By the time tomorrow came, there would be nowhere left for her to hide. No mask left to wear. No neighborhood left to fool. The woman who'd spent years winning at the cost of my twins' sanity was about to lose absolutely everything. By Sunday morning, the quiet suburban gossip machine of Willow Creek was already in full swing. Maya hadn't kept what she'd heard a secret. No one in the neighborhood did. The split second she'd walked off our porch the night before, she'd texted every wife in the community group, voice raw and stunned. The perfect Chloe Carter marriage wasn't perfect at all. The gentle, patient housewife they'd all admired for years had a cruel, vicious tongue behind closed doors. Rumors spread fast through the quiet tree-lined streets. Whispers circulated over morning coffee, through fence conversations, across driveway waves. Everyone remembered the barbecue blow-up, the way Aaron had pushed back, the way Chloe's mask had cracked wide open. Now it all made sense. By mid-morning, a small group of neighbors gathered casually on our front lawn, stopping by under the pretense of dropping off leftover weekend baked goods, but really to watch the fallout of the Carters' shattered fairytale marriage. Chloe knew they were watching. She'd spent the entire morning locked in a frantic, desperate damage control spiral. She re-uploaded curated family photos to her social media, bright and smiling, captioned with sickly sweet lines about marriage grace and overcoming small misunderstandings. She texted every neighbor she could, claiming Aaron was burned out from work, suffering from temporary stress-induced irritability, that their public fight was nothing more than a trivial marital bump. She was still trying to glue her broken mask back together. Still convinced she could talk her way out of the truth. When she descended the staircase that morning, she was dressed immaculately once again, blonde hair flawless, makeup airbrushed, outfit crisp and polished. She looked every inch the unbothered perfect wife, even though her hands trembled faintly at her sides. She found me in the living room, standing by the large bay window, watching the neighbors linger on the lawn. Her voice was low, sharp, and desperate. "This stops today," she said firmly. "You're going to go outside, you're going to apologize to everyone, you're going to tell them you overreacted, and we're going to move past this. You will not ruin my life because you're having a midlife crisis." I turned from the window and looked at her. She was still clinging to her old reality. Still believing I was the weak, compliant errand she'd broken for 3 years. Still convinced she could manipulate, gaslight, and pressure me into bending back into place. I shook my head slowly. "I'm not apologizing for anything." Chloe's jaw tightened. "You have no choice. Do you know what people are saying about me? Do you know how humiliating this is? You will fix this." I pulled out my phone, not Aaron's device this time, but my personal cell, loaded with every piece of evidence we compiled over the past week. Every audio file. Every screenshot. Every timestamped comment. Every late-night degradation she'd ever inflicted on my twin. "I'm not fixing your reputation," I said calmly. "I'm finishing what I started." Chloe's eyes widened with sudden, terrified realization. "What are you doing?" "I'm showing everyone exactly who you are." Before she could lunge for my phone, I opened my front door and stepped outside into the bright Sunday sunlight. Every neighbor's gaze snapped straight to me. The small crowd fell instantly silent. Maya stood at the front, her expression tense and uncertain, waiting for the apology Chloe had promised everyone was coming. The other neighbors watched with bated breath, ready to either forgive the stressed husband or witness the final collapse of Willow Creek's favorite marriage. Chloe followed me outside, panic flaring in her chest, scrambling to reclaim control of the narrative. "Everyone, please ignore yesterday's incident," she called out sweetly, forcing her warmest, most wounded smile. "Aaron's been extremely unwell lately, work burnout, severe anxiety, he's been lashing out irrationally. None of what he said reflects our real marriage, I promise you." "It's not burnout," I cut through her smoothly. "It's freedom." Chloe froze mid-smile. The neighbors all shifted, confused and curious. I lifted my phone, connected it to the outdoor speaker system Chloe used for her neighborhood parties, and pressed play. Her voice exploded across the entire front lawn, loud, unfiltered, unedited. "You're nothing without me. You're weak, useless, incompetent. I only stay with you out of pity." Another file played immediately after. "Every good thing in this life you have is mine. I built this home, this life, this status. You just exist here and take credit for my work." One after another, her years of hidden cruelty bled across the quiet suburban street. No more context to twist. No more excuses to make. No more stress arguments or, taken out of context, lies. This was systematic, daily, relentless emotional abuse. Precisely calculated, perfectly hidden, masterfully performed for years. The crowd's faces dropped in unison. Sympathy for Chloe vanished entirely. The gentle, patient wife image crumbled to dust right in front of her audience. Chloe's face turned bright red with humiliation, tears stinging her eyes, her perfect composure shattering completely. "Turn it off," she screamed, abandoning all pretense of grace, sprinting toward me in a blind panic. "Turn it off right now. That's private." You have no right. I stepped back, holding my phone out of her reach, and spoke loud enough for every single neighbor to hear every word of my final revelation. You want to know why he's never been the same? Why he's quiet, why he's reserved, why he never fought back? My gaze locked onto her crumbling, terrified face. Because it wasn't him you've been living with this past week. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. Chloe froze mid-charge, her eyes wide and disbelieving. I'm not Aaron. The words hung thick and heavy in the sunny air, rewriting every single thing everyone thought they knew. I'm Ethan. His identical twin brother. Complete, dead silence fell over the entire lawn. Maya's mouth fell open in pure shock. Chloe stared at me like the ground itself had split open beneath her feet. Aaron left town a week ago, I continued steadily. He left because he was broken. 3 years of your quiet, daily, unrelenting abuse drained every piece of his confidence, his joy, his self-worth. He was too gentle to fight you, too kind to expose you, too loyal to destroy the marriage you spent years perfecting for social clout. I gestured to the flawless house behind us, the perfect lawn, the curated flowers, the staged suburban paradise. He hated living in this fake palace. Hated being your prop, your project, your quiet trophy husband while you collected neighborhood praise for fixing him. I swapped places with him because he deserved to breathe. And you deserve to finally meet someone who wouldn't shrink for you, wouldn't apologize for existing, wouldn't let you get away with destroying a good man for your own ego. Chloe's entire body began to shake. All her confidence, all her control, all her arrogant certainty vanished in an instant. Every strange shift in behavior made sense now. The newfound confidence, the lack of fear, the refusal to submit, the willingness to fight back. She hadn't been dealing with a broken, burnt-out husband. She'd been dealing with a stranger who saw straight through every single one of her lies. You can't be serious, she stammered, voice breaking completely. That's impossible. You look exactly like him. You sound exactly like him. We're identical, I said flatly. Identical faces. Completely different souls. You spent 3 years breaking one twin. This week, I broke every single one of your lies. I scanned the stunned crowd of neighbors, my tone calm and final. For anyone wondering why Aaron never spoke up, never defended himself, never exposed her, it's simple. He's kind. Kind people don't weaponize pain. But I'm not him. I don't have his patience. I don't have his mercy. Chloe's tears spilled over, hot and furious, her perfect facade fully evaporated into raw, ugly desperation. This is blackmail, she shrieked, losing every last shred of dignity. This is revenge. You're twisting everything. I loved him. I cared for him. You loved the version of him you broke, I interrupted. You loved him small, quiet, compliant, and grateful for every crumb of kindness you tossed his way. You loved him powerless so you could feel powerful. The neighbors stared at her with unmasked disdain. All those years of community praise, all those awards for being the perfect spouse, all those humble speeches about marital sacrifice, every last bit of it was exposed as a calculated, manipulative performance. Maya stepped forward slowly, her voice quiet and resolute. I defended you. All of us did. We thought you were the victim. We thought Aaron was the lucky one. She shook her head in disgust. We were all so wrong. The damage was irreversible. Chloe's reputation, her social status, her perfect marriage, her pristine suburban legacy, everything she'd spent her entire adult life building shattered completely in front of the entire neighborhood. There was no one left to fool. No one left to convince. No mask left to wear. By the end of the day, every household in Willow Creek knew the truth. The perfect Chloe Carter was not a patient, devoted wife. She was an emotional abuser who'd spent 3 years torturing a gentleman for social clout and personal control. That evening, Aaron texted me from my cabin in the mountains. I'm free. Thank you, Short, simple, finally at peace. He was healing. Growing back into the confident, happy boy I'd grown up with. Free from the cage of perfect marriage, free from endless criticism, free from the weight of Chloe's ego. Meanwhile, Chloe was left alone in the empty, spotless villa she'd built for her perfect life. No neighbors stopped by. No one texted her supportive messages. No one invited her to brunch or charity events or weekend barbecues. Her entire social world vanished overnight. She still had her perfect house, her perfect lawn, her perfect curated photos. But she had no one left to perform for. She'd spent 3 years thinking she'd won. Thinking she'd conquered marriage, mastered control, outsmarted her quiet husband and turned his life into her personal perfect fairy tale. But winners don't need to break people to feel powerful. Winners don't need masks to be worthy of love and respect. She won the neighborhood's admiration for years. But in the end, I exposed every lie. I freed my brother. And she lost absolutely everything. The perfect life she'd clung to so desperately. It was never hers to begin with.